I want to turn now to Matea Gold in Washington. She's a national political reporter with the Washington Post, and she's done some in-depth reporting that takes readers behind the scenes of the Trump administration. Her much talked about story, co-written with the Post's Philip Rucker and Ashley Parker, is titled "The First Days Inside Trump's White House: Fury, Tumult, and a Reboot." All right, Matea, thanks so much for being with us. A lot to get to. First of all, when Sean Spicer faced questions about Mr. Trump's claim of voter fraud, he suggested that it was President Trump's personal belief, but not the White House's overall stance. But if Mr. Trump says he believes it, isn't it then the policy of the administration?
Well, it is, and I think what we're seeing right now is Trump's aides really struggling to figure out how to translate something that has been repeatedly debunked by fact checkers, including ours, and explain why the president is still holding on to this belief. It's something that even Republican leaders on the Hill are distancing themselves from, and I think it really speaks to the difficulty of this administration in its early days with a president who clearly has some beliefs that he's unwilling to shed despite the facts before him.
But could it be, Matea, that there's some kind of strategy to this, perhaps?
Well, what we've heard from Trump advisors is that when President Trump gets an idea in his head and really feels strongly about it, it is very difficult to dissuade him of it. And I think we saw this Saturday with this issue of the inaugural crowds, in which aides were clearly urging him not to come out and have his press secretary raise this issue that he had larger crowds than any other president in history. And, you know, we don't know what the behind-the-scenes conversations were about this issue of the allegations of voter fraud, but, you know, all strategists around the White House have been proclaiming very loudly that it is really counterproductive for the White House to be pursuing this. And so I think it's hard to see it as a strategy that is a winning and intentional one.
All right, Matea, on another issue here, we're seeing reports that President Trump is preparing executive action to limit entry from countries with majority Muslim populations. He's also expected to sign directives about security on the southern border. What gaps will you be looking out for between him and fellow Republicans on this issue?
Well, there's a lot of questions that'll be raised by what actually comes out on Wednesday. And my colleague Robert Costa has been reporting that actually we're going to see a series of announcements on immigration that will continue after Wednesday. You know, one of the big questions is the Dreamers who are here under DACA. What will happen with them? There'll be enormous pushback if there's an effort to really target them in the early days from Democrats and some Republicans as well. And really the language of the immigration executive actions is going to be closely scrutinized for how they're really going to put in place this policy to limit refugees from certain countries, and what screening mechanisms are they going to use, and are they actually going to be workable?
All right, we'll continue to watch that. But you had some really fascinating, detailed reporting behind the scenes of the Trump administration. Talk to us about the factions you see emerging in the White House.
Sure. So I think that there are several different dynamics playing out in the White House right now that are leading to these tumultuous early days of the administration. One is President Trump's own tendency to react, and someone say overreact, to perceptions that he's not as strong or as popular as he would like as he believes. And the other is the fact that he put in place very intentionally sort of two power centers in the White House. There's Stephen Bannon, who is his chief strategist, who is really aligned with Kellyanne Conway, who has emerged as a very prominent advisor. And then we have sort of the more pragmatic political nuts and bolts operation run by Reince Priebus, the former RNC chair, and Jared Kushner, who is Trump's son-in-law, is also very aligned with Reince and looking for a way to implement his father-in-law's strategies. And so we already see a dynamic in which there's going to be different advisors at different times who have President Trump's ear, and that he's really going to rely on to execute whatever his priority is at that moment.
On that dynamic, I want to put up this quote from your story. It reads, quote, "During the campaign, Trump was suspicious of both Priebus and Spicer, who were seen as more loyal to the party than to its nominee. Some privately wonder whether Conway is now trying to undermine Spicer." So, Matea, based on that, how should we understand Sean Spicer's role in the White House?
Well, there's no question that he was not President Trump's first choice. President Trump had told associates he preferred a woman in that role. First of all, he has a very strong idea of the physical appearance of different advisors in the role they should play. He thought that he should have a female press secretary. He was dissuaded from his earlier choices, and so Reince Priebus really urged him to take Spicer, who came out of the RNC. So, his relationship with Spicer will really be tested here on Saturday, when Spicer came out and delivered this very angry scolding of the press about its coverage of the inaugural crowds. Trump, we heard, was actually critical of the way he was reading the statement. So I think it's a very difficult position for him to be in as press secretary, and that's a dynamic we'll be closely watching.
And Matea, we only have about a minute left, but you also write about Kellyanne Conway. It's been fascinating to see that she really has been, in many ways, the face of the administration on television, but she's not actually in the communications office. Explain that dynamic, and could that create challenges for the administration potentially moving forward?
Sure, there's actually several different sort of parallel comm shops within the White House. Kellyanne Conway has said she might limit her television appearances, but we haven't seen evidence of that yet. There's no question that I think she is someone who has the president's ear, though, and so it'll be fascinating to watch how much he leans on her and keeps her in front of the cameras, because I think he believes that's a role she's very strong in.
Really interesting read. Matea Gold, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it.